research associate with the Project on Managing the Atom at the Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center. Thank you so much for being with us on the program today, Mariana. Now, what do you make of Biden's warning here? How seriously should it be taken?
I think we should take Mr. Putin's threats very, very seriously, and it's clear that President Biden is doing so. Of course, we also commemorate 60 years since the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was, the time in history where humanity has come very, very close to a nuclear war. If history doesn't rhyme or doesn't repeat itself, it certainly rhymes. I think that his invocation of a nuclear Armageddon is perhaps a little misplaced here, because what we are looking at here is not really a nuclear exchange between two nuclear-armed powers, like it was in the case of the Cuban Missile Crisis, but rather a use of a nuclear weapon by a nuclear state against a non-nuclear state that is not protected by a nuclear deterrent of its own, or extended nuclear deterrent of its ally, and the system of restraints here is entirely different.
So what would happen?
I'm sorry to say it's absent.
Right. So what would happen in the case of a nuclear attack on a country like Ukraine, to the people, to the infrastructure of the country, and of course to its neighboring countries?
That certainly depends on the kind of nuclear attack, right? What we've been discussing is, a use of a tactical nuclear weapon. This is in no way to discount the grave consequences that even sort of a lower yield nuclear weapon would cause. But it would depend, the kinds of damage and the kind of effects it would have would depend on Russians, and exactly the way Russians might decide to use it. So one of the options that, sort of specialists discuss that might be considered by Russia is a demonstrative uses, right? Something where no civilians or no people die, but Russia decides to kind of demonstrate its resolve and explode a nuclear weapon, say over a Black Sea or in some place else. That would certainly incur a lot of pushback and a lot of negative reactions for having crossed the nuclear threshold without actually gaining anything, no military advantages or anything like that. There could be a use, say, in the atmosphere, high in the atmosphere above the city, that would cause the electromagnetic pulse that would knock out electricity in that city and cause widespread destruction. But again, that would not undermine, say, Ukrainian military capacity to resist. Probably would just, harden the resolve, and again incur a lot of all the negative things about that would ensue. So the options here are limited. I guess it's a good thing.
So let me ask you this, because we are hearing Biden warn of nuclear weapons being used by Russia. How do you think his administration would react in the case of nuclear weapons being used by Russia? What would he do differently than he's already done?
So I think the challenge now for the administration in Washington, but also for NATO allies, is what to communicate to Kremlin now that is both doable and is credible, in order to dissuade him from using it, right? Because once he's already used a nuclear weapon, the options are all bad, right? It's the idea is what can the West do, or actually the world more broadly? I think global South here has a big role to play in order to prevent a nuclear use in the first place, because this is viewed as sort of this, on the verge of being this standoff between NATO and the West more broadly and Russia. I think NATO options are rather limited. They have taken pains not to become one of the parties to the conflict, to support Ukraine in any way they possibly can, short of actually becoming a party and one of the belligerents. So to say that maybe there will be a large-scale conventional response, that would certainly be something that I think would deter Mr. Putin, because that's something he wouldn't want happening.
We'd have to wait and see in the case of some nuclear weapons being used by Russia on Ukraine in this scenario,
Hopefully
particularly.
not.
Hopefully not. Mariana Budjeryn, unfortunately, that's all the time I have left, but it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for that analysis.
Thanks for having me.